Welcome to the wrap up of December and January. Every single book I read in December and every single book I read in January. Oh yeah, I have a bad throat. Hey you guys, welcome back to the channel. I hope you're doing very nice. I'm sending a lot of hugs and positivity to all of you. Hi, if you're new, welcome to the channel. I really hope you enjoy the content. If you do, please do consider subscribing. I have a bad throat because I took head bath and then I instantly had iced coffee. You do the math, what happens after that in winters. But I have definitely been dying to talk about all of the books now that my throat is a little bit better, and I had to blurt it all out, you know, how I have felt about the books. I am all set with my water, which I will have to take a sip of every single time I finish talking about one book. You take your water, your food, your coffee, your tea, whatever it is that you drink, and let's have some fun talking about these amazing 5-star, 6-star, 3-star, 2-star books. Starting with December, the first book I read in December was You Again by Kate Goldbeck. I was assured that this is the only book I will be reading, and then I'll be reading the entire ACOTAR series in December. Because it was the last month of the year, I was not putting a lot of pressure on myself to read a certain, like a TBR pile or reading books for videos, things like that. This is the story of Ari and Josh, who meet under very weird circumstances where they're dating the same woman, and then they obviously break into a fight and then they just leave each other, and oh fine, they went their own ways, and then they don't meet for a few months or a few years, I guess, and then they meet again, and again they fight about something, and again they go their own ways, basically till a certain point, after which they become friends. It is said to be the rendition of Harry Met Sally, but I had not watched Harry Met Sally when I read this book. I had watched Hum Tum, which I think is also the rendition of Harry Met Sally. So in my head I was directly relating it to Hum Tum, and Hum Tum is one of my most favorite movies ever that I watched as a teenager, and so it has like this special place in my mind, and this book took me right back to it, which attached me to the book. I loved the bickering, I loved the arguments and all of the conversations that both the characters were having under different circumstances, and then individually everything that they were going through. Then when it came to the romance side of it, the slow burn of it for like more than half the book, seeing them go from dating the same woman to actually falling in love with each other, and it was not a linear road, and it was not that they're meeting every single day, that there were years and months in the middle. It was all so good, and the book is so well written. It was the coziest, most comforting read ever. The slow burn, I still remember, like it's been so long since I've read it. Read in the beginning of December, and I still remember the feeling because the writing was so good. One of the best romances ever. I gave it 4 stars. Next, I read A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas, the first book in the ACOTAR series, which is the story of Farah. All I can tell you is that it is the story of Farah, who has to take care of her family because her father is not working, and she takes care, she's the what do you call it? Caretaker. She is the caretaker of the family, and one day she has gone into the forest to get food, and then she kills something that she's not supposed to kill, and then she's held into prison, like she's taken by the High Lord of Fairies, Tamlin. I have read this book because 1, it is romance fantasy. I want to read as much fantasy romance as possible because I love the genre. 2, I want to get into the Sarah J. Maas world. Honestly, this is not even the goal. The goal is the Throne of Glass series, which I have seen that you can read after the ACOTAR series. And 3, I wanted to see if I even like Sarah J. Maas's writing or not. 4, obviously the books are like insanely pretty, so then I had to get them. 5, you guys have requested me so many times to actually read this entire series and make a video on it. 6, it was on my TBR for 2023, so I thought that I'll just check it off by the end of the year. So many reasons to read this book. I did not enjoy it as much as I thought I would. I was a little worried actually already because I had read the Cruel Prince trilogy, which was about fairies, and I did not enjoy that series at all, like at all. And this is also about fairies, and I was like, what if I don't enjoy this too? But I must say it was very different from the Cruel Prince trilogy. It was way better, and I loved the character of Farah. I did enjoy so much of it, and I just loved the fairy tale-ish like sort of love going on, and there were these scenes that are ingrained in my brain because of the way they have been written in, that it was really good. And then towards the end, I did enjoy everything that Farah did. I basically loved the character of Farah a lot, but it was still just not as good compared to all of the hype, I was a little bit disappointed. One of the most amazing qualities of Feyre was diminished a little bit for a long time of this book, and I did not like it, and I forgot to bring the book here. After that, I read A Court of Mist and Fury because a lot of people tell me that the second book is way better, and I loved the ending of the first book and I wanted to continue the series, and I read A Court of Mist and Fury. I read, I think, the first 200 pages or something of that book, and I loved what was going on in that book. And then I had to go to Goa, so I had to drop A Court of Mist and Fury, though I did take it with myself to Goa thinking that I will want to read it over there. But once I stopped reading it, I just did not feel that urge to go back to it. Like, I did not have that urge to know more, because what am I going to know? And so I've not read the ACOTAR series since then. The next book I read was Delightful Sonnets, Versatile Genre of Poems by Mithali Shah. This book is written by Mithali, who is 15 years old and she is in 10th standard. Actually, I don't know which standard she is in right now, but she was in 10th standard when she had written this book. And it feels like when you are a teenager, like when I was a teenager, I used to keep a journal, obviously, to capture all of the experiences that I was having and the feelings that I felt. But instead of keeping a journal, Mithali has written poetry, and all of the feelings that she must be feeling during that time is reflected so beautifully through each poetry. This book also has pictures in it, which just, I genuinely felt like I'm peeking into her journal, which on one hand it felt like an indulgence. It felt like but on the other hand, I was so grateful to actually be reading it, and it was so relatable and so nostalgic, because this is how I used to feel when I was a teenager. It was such a refreshing experience. I loved it so much. There's one poetry, If I Was Naina, in YGHD, and one which is called Hello Secret Diary. These ones were like my favorite ones, and I can't recommend this book enough, especially if you are a teenager. I loved it. It's the most personal poetry collection ever, and I think I'm going to treasure it literally forever. Next, I read another poetry collection, which is Falutergeist by Nikhil Kunche, which is a complete 180 from this poetry collection. I am not a poetry person, but these books are literally making me feel like I could get into poetry. This is more like the thoughts that you have when you are about to go to sleep. The thoughts that you never talk about with anybody ever, because they're just so personal to you, and sometimes you feel like you're the only one having those thoughts. But when you read this book, you come to know that that's not true. If it is written like this by somebody who does not know you, it is yet again a universal experience, and everybody is feeling those things. When I was reading this book, I just felt so heard, and I have no idea why, because as I said, I am not a poetry person. I just don't understand poetry, and I feel like I'm too dumb for it. But I did not feel like that when I was reading this collection. It throws light on what it is like to be lonely, what it is like to be lonely with your thoughts, with yourself, with your feelings. I actually want to reread this book and write all of the feelings I was feeling while reading each poetry, and then this just becomes like your personal journal, a personal notebook that you can carry around with yourself too. Next up, I read Love Redesigned by Lauren Asher. Lauren Asher is also the author of the Dreamland Billionaire series, and I enjoyed that series so much, and so I was very excited to read this. Plus, I read this on the train to Goa, and I just knew that I wanted to read a romance like this. I started it and I finished it on the ride itself, like on the train itself, which is to say that it's a very binge-worthy book, and it was so much fun. It's the story of Julian and Dahlia, who used to live in the same lake as children, and they were always like at some sort of a rivalry with each other, always wanted to be better than each other. But then they grew apart, they went here and there, blah blah. Now they have come back to the same lake, and they're both going through their own personal stuff. This book is almost 600 pages. As much as I enjoyed the entire book and I loved the characters so much, and so I was not bored at all anywhere. I could actually read more than what I read about these characters because I loved it so much. I still do think that it was very long. Like, it did not have to be this long. It could easily be like 350 to 400 pages, because there was a pattern going where they were very self-aware of what they are doing and how they're hurting each other or when they're being good to each other. There was a lot of self-awareness going on, which is amazing, which is why I loved Final Offer so much. And there was an arc going on where both the characters started a certain way and you can see them grow personally and then together, but that pattern of realizing that, oh, this is what I am doing wrong, and then deciding to change that and then changing that and then growing really nicely together, it was a little bit repetitive after a certain point. Like, I get it, you did this wrong and I know that you cannot change within a day, so it's going to happen again and again. I get that, but that did make the book very long. That was my only problem with it, which may also be a problem for you. Does that mean that you should not read the book? No, not at all. It was so good, so nice. I got so many butterflies and I was giggling. It made my train ride so bearable and so nice. I highly recommend it. It does have spice in it. Next up, in Goa, I read Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I actually also did try to read Encyclopedia of Fairies, but I DNF'd that. And then I tried reading The Cloisters, DNF'd that. I finished reading this book. This was my last read of 2023. If I was to make the best books of 2023 video now, this book would be in it because of how amazing it was. The story is so simple. It's not simple actually, but it's a story of these 4 siblings in the present time and how they're surviving and how they're living, and there is a particular party for which they're preparing, but you also see the other struggles that they face on a day-to-day basis. And then you go to the past where you see the story of their parents, where you see the story of their grandparents, and it dives deep into all of these family members, the Riva family. It's the writing style of Taylor Jenkins Reid that just makes the book so gripping. Also, the emotions are so raw when Taylor Jenkins Reid is writing it that you actually genuinely get to feel what it must be feeling like for the character when they're going through certain things. It talks about multiple topics. It also talks about some sensitive topics, so do read the trigger warnings before you get into the book. Overall, it was just so good. It's a 6-star read. I love this book so much that I sort of got into a slump after it because I just did not know if I can ever read anything that is this good. If you're a beginner, you're trying to get out of a reading slump, things like that, if you want to read a book to remind yourself how amazing books are and how it can make you feel, this is your book. After coming back from Goa, while I did try to read a few books here and there, which I talked about, Encyclopedia of Fairies and The Cloisters, the first book that I actually read was The Light We Lost by Jill Santopolo. I have annotated it a lot because I just had so many thoughts when I was reading this book. It was very kindly gifted to me by Vasundhara, so as soon as I opened it, I was like, I have to read it. It was also on my wish list and it sounded so intriguing. It is the story of 2 people that come together on a very tragic day, the tragic day of 9/11, and they build an instant connection, but then they're torn apart. They have been separated. I desperately wanted to love this book, and this book definitely made me feel a lot of things, like literally a lot of things. All of those annotations are not only because of the beautiful quotations, but also because all of the thoughts I was having. Like, I have such notes throughout the book. It just made me contemplate so much on what love can look like and what relationships can look like and the kind of love that is there in the world and what is truly right and what is not right. When they're torn apart, Lucy also finds another man that, according to her, she falls in love with. So there's a love triangle going on and it's just so complicated. So yeah, it did make me feel all of those things and I did have a good time reading it and I liked the writing style, but there were just these things that these characters were doing that I'm just not in the favor of, and I don't think I ever will be in the favor of. For example, I don't think it's a spoiler, but when Lucy is with the other guy, I understand that she misses Gabe, the guy that she kissed on during 9/11, and it was so beautifully written. Seriously, like the first 2-3 chapters, it was so enchanting, but that was not followed up. And then fine, she misses him, blah blah, but you are with somebody else and you say that you truly love him, then why are you constantly comparing this relationship with that relationship, or how you feel with him with how you feel with Gabe? And I do get it, exactly. Like, that's the thing, it makes you question relationships and love. It is not a black and white thing, it's a gray area. So I don't know, but at the same time I was like, no, like I don't want that. Like, I don't like it. That's how this book made me feel. I think I was able to, without wording it properly, encapsulate how it made me feel. I gave this book 3 stars. I still do recommend this book because the writing was so beautiful. There were some quotes that were just amazing. Next up, I picked One for My Enemy by Olavi Blake, of which I think I read 100 or 150 pages and then I DNF'd this book, which is just crazy because Olivia Blake is one of my most favorite authors ever. I was also annotating this book and it was a lot of fun, but something happened 150 pages into the book, and something was I just hate how I have to say so many somethings because I don't want to give a spoiler, but something was building up and I was like, fine, that's what my experience has been like with Olivia Blake. The first 60-70 pages I really don't understand what is going on because there is something being built up, and then as soon as you pass that stage you're like, wait, wow, this is just crazy, wow, this is so amazing. So I was waiting for that amazing crazy part, but something happened and I was just like, no. It was a very important thing to me, the thing that was keeping me stuck to the book. Till that point, however, there were so many quotations. Olivia Blake's writing, beautiful, so beautiful. The characters, so powerful. This is the story of two witch families set in New York. So it is set in modern times, but they are families of witches, the Antonova sisters and the Fedorov brothers, and they are rivals. They are fighting for power. I'm telling you, it was actually really good. Also, it said that it's based on Romeo and Juliet by Shakespeare, so it was good. It's also written in that like act style, act 1, act 2. It was so exciting, but that one particular thing that happened really made me drop the book and I just did not want to read it. Next up, I read Lives Not Lived by Monica Bhatti, which is a story of Hari and Naina. I really hope that's how you take the name of Hari because that's what I have been calling her. Both of these women are just going through a lot of problems in their own family that they have to face just because they have been born women. Hari is married off when she is 16. Naina is not able to pursue her dream, and as you progress in the story, something really horrible happens because of which both of these characters are going through immense emotional turmoils and pain. As I said, I was in a reading slump, but I do think that this book sort of brought me back from the reading slump. It made me remember again why I love reading. It talks about so many important topics and there are so many triggers. I'll put the trigger warnings in the description for you to check out, so please check that before you get into the book. Child marriage, abuse, and how different women react differently to these situations, even though in the first place they should not have to face these things at all. And on top of that, the writing style was so intense and so beautiful. It literally wrecked me. It took my heart and tore it into pieces, and then there was like this light of hope, and you see the courage and the way these women are living and the things that they do and their vulnerability and their strength. It also did remind me of A Thousand Splendid Suns by Khaled Hosseini, because I feel like in that book also there were these two women going through their personal journeys and something horrible was happening, but then they were brought together because of some certain things, and that is sort of what happens in this book. So if you liked A Thousand Splendid Suns and you want another book like that, the same empowered feeling, the brutality but the courage and the hope, then this is your book. Very easy to read. You can read it as a beginner also, but please remember to see the trigger warnings in the description. Because I read a book which was so much about the human experience and loss and pain and sadness, I wanted to read another book like that, and so I picked up on The Berry Pickers by Amanda Peters. Unfortunately though, I also DNF'd this book, so there were 2 DNFs this month. I read around 50 to 60 pages of this book. I removed the bookmark. A little girl actually goes missing from this family and we see the journey of them trying to find her. I DNF'd this one though because it was very slow paced. This one on the other hand was very fast paced. Because I was feeling slumpy, I wanted something like that, and this book was just not that. So I'm not saying that the book is bad, and I loved the writing style so much, but it was quite slow for me. When I'm in a reading slump, I like to buy books and randomly pick on a random book, and so I bought like 3 books, and one of them was Sometimes I Lie by Alice Feeney, which as soon as I received the package, I tore it open and I read this book. I wanted the comfort of Alice Feeney, not because she writes comforting things, but because I just knew that she writes so well that it will be a very good book. I wanted to make sure I'm getting into a book like that. Secondly, it is fast paced because it is a thriller, and thirdly, the mystery keeps me on my toes. This is the story of a woman who is in coma. He says that there are 3 things that you should know about her. She's in a coma, her husband does not love her anymore, and sometimes she lies. Even though she is in a coma, you can hear her thoughts, and at the same time you are seeing what is going on the outside, obviously like outside her mind, everything that is going on a day-to-day basis. Horrible things have happened to her. You get to see how she actually went into the coma. You get to see what she's feeling and the things that she is seeing when she is in a coma, which was just very trippy, honestly, and it was so good. Alice Feeney's writing, god, it can be frustrating a little bit because of how mysterious it is and because you don't know who to trust. But at the same time, the grip that this book had on me was crazy. It was crazy. I finished it in one sitting because I don't know how to not do that with her books. Like, how do I just read a little bit and then be like, okay, I'll read a little bit tomorrow? I can't do that. You need to know. You just really need to know what happens. Wow, I've gotten too excited right now. I should not put so much strain on my throat. Twists and turns were amazing. I did guess one little thing, but apart from that, completely unpredictable, so dark, so twisted. My mind was boggled. Just one thing is that, first of all, it was also my fault because I thought that this book is about a husband and a wife getting into trouble because it says that my husband doesn't love me anymore, but it's not that. So that was one disappointing thing. And secondly, I feel like it still does not match up to what I felt when I was reading Rock Paper Scissors, and I think that's still a personal thing because Rock Paper Scissors is about a couple, and I am obsessed with couples going through shit and doing really dark things, and that is what was going on in Rock Paper Scissors because it is about a couple on their anniversary. This one is not, and so it just did not hit the mark completely. It's a 4-star book. Again, with the husband wife, the reading slump, getting a book, randomly reading it. The next book I read was FInalay Donovan Knocks Him Dead, which is the second part in the FInalay Donovan series. The first book is FInalay Donovan is Killing It, and I love that book so much, and the epilogue just got to me. It was so good. So I was so excited to get this book and read it, also because I thought this one also is about husband, wife, whatever. Guess what? It was not. This was actually so annoying because for the first 150 pages I was so excited, and it was actually written beautifully, exactly the way the first book was written in, and it was funny, but at the same time it was thrilling. But after I finished reading like half of the book, I was just like, I did not want to read more. In the ending, the epilogue of this book, now I have to read the third book, which is FInalay Donovan Jumps the Gun. I cannot tell you what this book is about because that will be sort of like spoiling the first book. But is the second part as good as the first part? No. It was a little repetitive, quite predictable, and the ending was just not satisfying. Next up, I read Checkmate by Ali Hazelwood. Ali Hazelwood, yet again, just like TJR, does not disappoint at all. What an amazing experience. Checkmate, which is Ali Hazelwood's first YA romance. This is the story of Mallory and Nolan. Mallory has been seeing Nolan since a long time, and she used to play chess a lot, but then she had to quit due to some reasons, and Nolan is the present chess grandmaster. He's like the best in the world of chess, and so Mallory sometimes follows him. Some things happen, and even though Mallory has completely quit on chess, she finds herself opposed to Nolan, the greatest chess player in the world, and she smashes him down, and he's like, wait, what just happened? I loved this book. I don't know when I'll read an Ali Hazelwood book and feel like, oh, you know what, like I did not really like that guy. That never happened. That never happens because I loved Nolan too. In this, I loved Mallory. I feel like I want characters like Mallory even in the adult romance books of Ali Hazelwood, just because of how self-aware she was and how funny she was, and her self-depreciating jokes were quite funny. It did not feel like a YA book to me at all, except for their ages being like young adult. There were so many parts of this book that did not feel like young adult to me at all. I'm just questioning myself though here, that what if the way young adult is written has changed now because the world is progressing and I'm just old, and so I feel like, you know, this is not YA. But just like the innocence and just that giddiness that comes with YA was not there, which was a little bit disappointing. But I just loved the book so much, and I loved the story so much, and it is also like majorly the story of Mallory and her family, Mallory and chess, so much Mallory with like a subplot of romance, but the romance that was there was beautiful. And you guys know I love reading like stories of these characters going through stuff. Also, it reflected upon what it is like to be a woman in the chess world. That was so good, like a YA book, and it also did not feel majorly like a romance. So it's basically not what it is marketed as, but it's still really good. I gave it 4.5 stars. Oh yeah, I forgot to tell you, I gave this like 3 stars. Next up, I read 2 books together. So one, I was reading A Study in Drowning by Ava Reid. Before that though, I started reading The Book of Everlasting Things by Anchal Rani. Let's first talk about this. All this cribbing about my reading slump and feeling like forgetting why I love reading and not being able to immerse myself into a story, all of those things going on. And then I pick on this book, which is a historical fiction / historical romance, and my life changed. After Malibu Rising, this is the first book that got 6 stars from me. I love this book so much. It's a story of Samir and Firdaus, who have fallen in love with each other since childhood, but the partition happens in 1947 and they're separated from each other. That is what the book says that it's about, but as you read the book, you come to know that it is about so much more than that. The entire family of Samir, the entire family of Firdaus. The story of Samir and Firdaus is so small, such a small, intense but small part of it, because there is so much going on. There is so much going on, and all of these emotions and the things that it made me feel and the things that it made me question, and capturing the partition like that, capturing the essence of being a human being going through all of those things, so beautiful. And there was a part in it which was like pure devastation. This one chapter which was pure devastation in a chapter, and then I'm like, I can never recover from that. So I did not read this book for a long time after that, which is when I picked up on this book, because I did not know how to read after that. I did not just know how to move forward. Then I picked on the book again after finishing this book, and it was so good, and that ending was so good. Also, this book talks a lot about fragrance and smelling and ether and all of these beautiful things that never leave you, because Samir's family is into the business of fragrance. And on the other hand, Firdaus's family is in the field of calligraphy and art and cartology, I guess, and that left such a lasting impact on me. I got ether for myself, and this one smells like first rain. I got it from Isaac. If you want it, I will link it in the description if you want, and it smells like first rain. And the importance of this, you only get, like, apart from it smelling literally the best in the world, you only know the importance of this when you read this book. That is when you know what this means, because this book has changed my life. 6-star read. It's a must read. I do think that beginners can read the book, but not complete beginners in the reading world. If you are a beginner in the literary fiction, historical fiction world, you always read romance and mystery thrillers, and you're like, you know what, I'm going to expand my reading taste a little bit, that is your book, The Book of Everlasting Things. In the middle, I read A Study in Drowning, and this is the story of a girl who has like the lowest self-esteem ever, and it's not her fault. She is just surrounded by the shittiest people in the world, and nothing brings her joy, and she's just going through so many problems on a day-to-day basis. The one point of joy in her life is that her favorite author ever wants to, not the author itself, the author is dead, but his son wants to rebuild the house that the author lived in so they can protect his legacy better. And so she goes to that place, but then there is another guy over there already who is there to take care of all of the works of the author and put it in, wait one second, I'm just very distracted because I want to smell this again. I really want to like lick it sometimes, like I want to eat it. Coming back, he is there to take care of all of the documents on all of the remaining work of the author, so he can take to the archive and they can preserve it properly. Effie, the girl, is an architecture student, and Preston is a literary student. Now, the rivalry between them is that Effie has always wanted to go to the literary college, but women are not allowed in that college. And so as soon as she sees Preston and him just, you know, flailing about and not taking things seriously and accusing her favorite author, she's like, you know what, just like go away. So that is the rivalry going on between them. As the story moves ahead, Effie realizes that her author is not as amazing as she thought he is, and the story is unfolded. I was so attached to Effie. I think the driving force of this book is Effie, not the romance and not the fantasy. I've seen a lot of people say that this is an amazing rivals to lovers fantasy romance, but I would say that it is. I feel like the romance was like 2% in this book. Effie is such a good character. I feel like she's going to stay with me forever. She, I'm telling you, is surrounded by the worst people in the world. Her mother literally sucks. The college sucks. The teachers suck. She has like 2 friends, but they also don't care about her as much. The place she goes to sucks. The people there suck. It's just everybody sucks, and it's just so sad that she's not able to pursue her dream of being like an author and a storyteller just because she's a woman. Oh my god, she is constantly driven by fear and guilt. She is constantly putting herself down because that's what she's taught to do, and it's just so hurtful to read all of those things. But at the same time, I was so attached to the character of Effie because I just wanted to go and hug her and tell her that you're not as bad. Fast forward to when she meets Preston, and Preston is a darling. I love Preston so much. I just loved the individual characters so much that when there was romance between these characters, it was actually fun to read the romance part. So yes, in all, it was an amazing experience, and I gave it 4 stars. I did not give it 5 stars because I just think ending was a little rushed. Also, I said this in my 2024 reading goals video that I want to read more books that like induce a lot of emotions within me, which is why I loved this book so much, because of all of the emotions that I have felt with this book. That was just missing from this book for some reason. Except reading the individual journey of Effie, I was not feeling a lot of emotions anywhere. In the end, to finish off the month, I read another book about another couple, another thriller book about another couple, which is The Couple at Number 9 by Claire Douglas, and I was disappointed yet again because this also is not about a couple. Like, what is going on? Why are all of these books marketed as books about couples? Like, couple is in the title. This is the story of a couple at the house number 9, which they have inherited from the woman has inherited from her grandmother, and everything is going great, and the woman is pregnant and blah blah blah, everything is awesome, till one day when they are extending their kitchen, there are 2 dead bodies found, the remains of 2 dead bodies found in her backyard. That is the main story, not anything related to the couple. The couple was actually really nice. Was it good? Yes. It was amazing. It was so twisted and so dark, and I loved the pacing and I loved the mystery part of it. It reminded me a little bit of Wrong Place, Wrong Time, which was my most favorite crime fiction ever in 2023, mixed with Alice Feeney books, because the mystery was just so thick. So there was emotional quotient going on, there was mystery thriller going on, there was thrill going on, it was dark, you did not know what to do, you did not know what to expect, and then the ending was like really good, completely unpredictable, and it all tied up really well together. So I really did enjoy the book. The only 2 problems were, 1, all of the things that I said about the couple, and 2, I feel like there were like 2 or 3 really useless characters in this book. Why would you put them? If you're looking for a good, dark, twisted crime fiction, then this is your book. I highly recommend it. Gave it 4 stars. And that was the end of my reading slump. I'm trying to film the ACOTAR video as soon as possible, but let's see. Like, I feel like I really have to be in the mood to read the entire series. Plus, I have forgotten a little bit what happened in the first book, so I don't know how I'm going to go about it. But this is the end of the video. I really hope you guys enjoyed it, and that's it. I'll see you guys again very soon in the next video. Bye.